Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of Discernment Now. My name is Rich Van Every. This is Kevin Anthony, and we are here to help explain what might be hard to understand in today's crazy clown world circus show fiasco that we get to live through. Some think we're blessed, some think we're cursed for living in this amazing time in human history. I find it quite challenging and a little annoying. How about you, Kev?
Yeah, well, they keep saying, oh, you're so lucky to be alive at this time in history.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I buy it, honestly.
Huh? Come on.
I think that's like when they tell a bride that it's good luck when it rains on her wedding, just to make her feel better that it's raining and it sucks.
Well, some consider it a spiritual journey, and I think that's certainly in part what it's been for me. It's an opportunity to ascend. And
maybe so, but I feel like this is probably my 4,000th tour in this war, and I'm ready for a little R&R.
Yeah, it would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
I think the idea of getting through this and having things like come to a peaceful, harmonious world seem a little far-fetched, but I like the concept.
Well, let's just dive into the stories. We got a bunch of things to cover here.
Too many, really. But
don't worry, we'll go through some of them rather quickly. It's been a little while since we have done an episode, so obviously a lot has happened, because these days 1 or 2 days goes by and a lot has happened. So we want to cover a few of the things that we missed that are maybe a little older, but you may or may not have heard of. And then, of course, some newer things as well. So first one on the list, Best Buy. You all know the store. Best Buy, they have come under fire recently because they have a management program that excludes whites.
Wow.
So anybody
so evolved
other than whites can apply to be in this. It's like a management accelerator program where they groom you to be upper management. Mm-hmm. And apparently whites are not allowed. Now, what's interesting about that is it's fucking racist.
Yeah.
It's racist.
Yeah.
It's literally the definition of racism.
So we went from critical race theory, right? Was that CRT? So now it's CRR? Because this is critical race reality now, or critical race.
Well, critical race theory is also racist if you dig into
which is in
the
a sense
writings
this,
of
right?
Abraham
Which is
Kendi, and you look at know, what he's saying.
Right.
It is racist, which is why people don't want it in the schools. But okay, why are we talking about this? Well, because probably one of the first things you learned as a child was 2 wrongs don't make a right. Because when you talk about this and you point out that some of these things are blatantly racist, people will come back and say, oh, you white people, now you're just complaining like a bunch of crybabies. This is
white privilege, really.
This is what, minorities have had to deal with, for however long.
It's our turn now. The
Right.
white man gets his turn.
But remember what your mother told you when you were a little kid. 2 wrongs don't make a right. You do not solve the problem of racism by creating more racism. That doesn't solve anything.
It's about equality, though, Kevin.
Yeah, right.
Come on.
So I wanted to put this story in here, and anytime I see these stories, we are going to bring them out on the show.
I haven't even heard of that one, so that was a good little
because
nugget.
we need to expose the blatant hypocrisy of the left.
Absolutely.
All right. Next one on the list, this has been out for a little while already, but the chief of Capitol Police was on Tucker on Twitter. Tucker did a pretty good interview with him, and what I find interesting about it is as we were getting details about January 6th, we could see that there were a lot of things that didn't add up. We could see that Capitol Police moved barriers and let people in. We could see that Capitol Police escorted people around the building. We could see them tell people, we're going to let you in here, but you're not allowed to do any damage, right? We could see a lot of things. We were thinking, what's going on with Capitol Police here? Because obviously they were not doing their jobs.
Kind of in on it.
So I was very curious to hear how the chief of Capitol Police explained himself.
Yeah.
Seriously, how do you explain your behavior? Well,
that was a bold move to
we have
an interview.
to trust that what he is saying is accurate. But basically what he said was that he was blocked at every turn. He wanted to do things much sooner. He wanted to call in National Guard. He wanted to do a lot of things. And the people above him and the person actually above him in charge of Capitol Police was Nancy Pelosi. The people above him stalled him and intentionally made him wait longer than he would have, and then things transpired. So the reality is he felt extremely frustrated, or at least this is what he voiced in the interview, that he was not able to actually do his job properly. And we could see that the Capitol Police hadn't done their job properly. So now we have testimony from the chief, the man in charge of Capitol Police, saying that his superiors got in the way and prevented him from doing his job.
Wow.
So that's not what you heard at all in the mainstream narrative. You heard that they were these brave Capitol Police who risked their lives and were overwhelmed by the protesters, yada, yada, yada. Apparently not.
Yeah.
Exactly correct.
Yeah, you can tune into Epoch Times if you want to dive deeper. They have a whole investigative documentary on January 6th, and they are doing incredible journalism, in my opinion. So this is something you could just go on and on about. I mean, it is just an obscene mess. It kind of reminds me of more recent events.
I didn't want to go too deep into all of the January 6th stuff because it's still unfolding as we speak. But the next thing on our list also revolves around January 6th. So, as you know, some of the recent indictments of Trump have to do with January 6th. And there's this thing called discovery. So when you are indicted and you're going into a trial, both sides get discovery, which means they get to see all the evidence, right? Well, as soon as Trump was indicted, and that gave Trump's lawyers the right to discovery, the January 6th committee deleted 1.5 terabytes of evidence.
That's a lot.
1.5 terabytes of evidence. That is a lot of evidence. What did they delete? Why did they delete it? What don't they want us to see or know? Anytime somebody deletes evidence before a trial, in my personal opinion, that automatically indicates that they are guilty of something.
Definitely.
Because you don't destroy evidence unless that evidence is damning to you.
Right. They're not playing fair, Kevin. So
they never do.
We haven't lived in. Did we ever live in a fair world?
No.
Not really. Okay.
Nope.
So we don't have to feel bad about that.
No, but here's what I will say, and I'm not the only one to say this, and I'll say it's not even necessarily an original idea, although it's something I've been thinking for quite a while. But there's a lot of people now, quote unquote, on the right, and I don't really like to use the terms left and right, but the left, what we call, the deep
the
state,
radical
the
left,
bureaucrats, the radical left, the cabal, whatever. They have never played fair. They have always broken all the rules in order to, accomplish whatever their goal is. But the people opposing them, whether you call them rights, independents, whatever, have always tried to abide by the rule of law. And while I do still agree with abiding by the rule of law, they would take it a step further in a sense that they weren't just abiding by the rule of law. They were also sort of acting, for lack of a better term, in sort of a gentlemanly manner, right? And so a lot of people are saying enough is enough. We can't win in a war against people who have no morals, no boundaries, will break every law that there is if we are trying to follow the rules.
That's
right?
true.
So there are a lot of people calling for, look, they're playing dirty. We got to play dirty too.
Yeah.
Now, my caveat on that is if we go breaking all the laws and do all the dirty tricks they do, that we're no better than they are, and at the end of the day, we're just going to end up with more shit. So
and more divide because they control the legacy media.
Right. But that doesn't mean that we have to be gentlemen about it.
Right.
When we can play hard too.
Yeah.
And I think that's
more intimidation
what needs to happen now.
More like aggressive talk, more shaming, like things that aren't violent but really do put pressure on people to know. Hey,
well, so for instance,
buddy.
Here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. So there is an unwritten rule in politics that during an election, you don't legally go after your political opponent. Why? Because it looks bad. It looks like you're a corrupt dictator who's trying to put your opponent in jail.
Especially when they're really weak.
So what has the left done?
Indictments.
The left has done exactly that. They have gone after their political opponent in a presidential race, breaking all previous precedent. Now, I know any liberals watching this will go, screw precedent. Trump is so evil that we had to do it. Okay, yeah, whatever.
Orange man is
you suffer from TDS, right? So
yeah.
But that's what I'm talking about when I say they played dirty. And so what I'm saying is, not to make up phony charges like the left has done, but when the left has actually done things that are illegal, like the entire Biden crime family, there's no like, we'll wait until after the election. No. The gloves are off at this point. You got to go. Whatever evidence you have, you take it to court and you go through the court system. You indict these people. You arrest them if you have. Whatever you got to do, you got to do. There's no like playing Mr. Nice Guy anymore. That's my personal opinion.
Well, let us pray.
So
that's what I got to say. So yeah, can we move on now to the next one of the bigger stories that has been now a few weeks old.
Right, and that's the Trump indictment in Georgia.
Oh, no, not that one, but we'll move on.
Oh, you want to talk about the other one?
Yeah.
All right, well, we're getting there. That's next.
Okay.
The next one on the list is the Trump indictment in Georgia, and there are a couple of interesting things about that. The first one is that before the grand jury even finished convening to decide whether or not they were going to indict Trump, the indictment was leaked, right? Now, originally the story was like, oh, it's not real. That's what they said. That what was leaked on the internet wasn't real. But then some people came out and said, but that's really interesting that it's not real because it's almost word for word exactly the same as what the grand jury came up with. Wow, what a coincidence that is, right? So then they changed the story and they said they actually had the woman, the court clerk who entered it into the system. They had her, they paraded her out in front of the media, and she got out there and said, well, I was inputting it in the night before, and instead of clicking save, I accidentally clicked send, right? Yeah, but that doesn't explain why you were writing it the night before when they hadn't even finished deliberating yet. So the first thing that we want you to know on this show, since this is discernment now, is that they obviously had already come to a conclusion. Like this was a foregone conclusion. So they just went through the motions of convening a grand jury where they were just like, this is going to be the outcome no matter what happens, right? Like nobody writes these things up just in case, right? So that's the first thing that I would want people to know. The second thing is always keep in mind when it comes to indictments in legal world, there's this idea that you can indict a ham sandwich, right? In other words, people think that when you present evidence in front of a grand jury, you've got to present all this evidence, and the grand jury looks at it and goes, wow, that's pretty overwhelming evidence there. Yeah, there's enough. That's not the way it works. When the prosecutor shows up and makes his case, he doesn't go, here's all my evidence. He just tells you what he has, right? So we have evidence about this, and this. And the grand jury, oh, well, okay, they have evidence about that. I guess that seems like enough.
Wow, yeah.
Hence the term, you can indict a ham sandwich, because you can indict anybody for anything. Yeah. Because you're not actually going through the motions of a trial.
Yeah,
now.
It's not even a valid.
So it doesn't really mean anything.
But it sounds good. It sounds good, and it's worked because most people are quite ignorant actually, and they don't actually understand what an indictment is, but they just think it's a charge that this person has committed a crime.
Well, most people think that when you're indicted, it means you're guilty.
Oh yeah.
That's what a lot of people think. Yeah. And I see it all over the left. They're like, he got indicted. See, we told you he was guilty. And like, an indictment doesn't mean you're guilty. An indictment simply means they're charging you with a crime. Right. It means they think you committed a crime, but they haven't proved it yet.
Okay, so the bigger question here, obviously, is does this fall on the side of political theater? Are we in political circus? I mean,
what we're in is Banana Republic, tin pot dictator land, where you just attack your political opponents and you throw them in jail so they can't run against you and you can maintain power. Yeah, that's literally what's happening. Right. The reality of this situation is they're trying to get him for saying that the election was rigged. Right. And then, a friend of mine, I told him, this is not true. What he said was constitutionally protected free speech. And then this friend comes back and says, Well, apparently, I read another article, and the distinction is not that he said that the election was rigged, but that he said he won the election, and that's where it becomes illegal. No, that is not true also. And if it were true, I will point you to Stacey Abrams, who lost the governor's race in Georgia, and still to this day says that she won and she's actually the governor. I will point you to Hillary Clinton, who has said multiple times that she won the 2016 election. There is a laundry list of high-ranking Democrat political figures who have all said that 2016 was rigged by the Russians and that they won their elections. How come none of them were arrested? How come none of them have been indicted? How come there's no mugshots of those people, right?
Yeah.
Somebody put together a supercut. It's literally 10 minutes long of little, 30-second sound bites of Democrats saying that the elections were rigged and that they won. How come none of them have been arrested?
It's just ridiculous. I mean, it's almost like they're trying so hard, but at the same time, not enough people perhaps are up in arms about it or saying a whole lot of things so that it just starts to be normalized. And then you were just caught in this like whirlpool of propaganda and confusion, and people are like, I don't even know what is true. I can't handle it anymore.
Well, from their perspective, they just don't care that there's a double standard. And there's very clearly a double standard.
Orange man bad, right?
When it comes to the blinders are on. There's what we call I will argue actually a 3-tier justice system. So you'll hear people say there's a 2-tier justice system, which means that there's a different justice system for political elites versus the people. That is absolutely true. But I'm going to say there's a 3-tier system because we have a mountain of evidence against Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and Hillary Clinton, but nothing ever happens to them. We have the shakiest, flimsiest. I mean, some of the lawyers that have looked at these indictments have said these are the worst indictments they've ever seen in law. Like, no actual evidence of anything, right? And yet, here they are, multiple indictments, multiple court trial, all this stuff. So that's yet another level. So they're like justice system. And then, of course, there's the bottom of the bottom, which is us, the people.
Right.
If we do anything, even a fraction of what any of these people do, where they just walk away all the time, we're not just arrested and thrown in jail, but they throw the proverbial book at you, where you'll be in jail for the next 30 freaking years for something that another politician can literally admit on tape and nothing ever happens to them.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. So, that is just a messy debacle, similar to our next story, which is the Maui fires.
Yeah.
And it's not just Maui, is it, Kevin? No, there's multiple other fires happening on that island. There are hundreds of fires raging in Canada, in Greece, in other parts of the world. And
it's very convenient that they're using all of these fires to say it's climate change. That's why we're having all these fires.
Well, it's creating more pollution, which is the biggest downside of industrial production.
When you look at satellite imagery, like for instance in Canada, you can see that the Canadian fires all started simultaneously at the exact same time over a huge area. That is not possible. These were obviously intentionally set. So don't try to tell me this is climate change. This has nothing to do with climate change.
No.
Individuals, for whatever reason, and you can debate who they are and what their reasons are setting these fires. It doesn't have anything to do with climate change.
No. And to add insult to injury, just about every possible thing you could imagine being done wrong in the things leading up to the disaster and then during the disaster and after the disaster have been a little flabbergasting for me.
Well, there are a ton of details that don't really make sense. So
every detail.
Why didn't they shut off the power when they knew there was going to be high winds?
Yeah.
Why did they turn off the water? Why did they block the roads? Why did they send the kids home from school? Why didn't they sound the alarm system that was specifically designed to be used in the case of fire? There's a ton of things that don't add up.
And if it ain't FEMA food, it's not good enough for you to eat, all right? So,
well, that's because they've been trying to hoard all the supplies and they haven't actually been distributing them. So the locals have had to go around them, bring things from other areas by boat to get around the roadblocks and to try to get supplies in, because FEMA is completely fucking everything up.
Yeah, and don't use GoFundMe ever again, in my opinion. The GoFundMe is just about as dark and evil and corrupt as all the other PayPal and ridiculous companies.
So there's a couple of things that need to be mentioned about Maui. There's right now it's still ongoing, and we're getting details here and there, but we're also getting a lot of conflicting details, and it's really hard to figure out what is actually going on. However, we do know a few things. For instance, FEMA put out a memo telling everybody no more drone footage, no more pictures, no more anything being shared across social media. They want a complete blackout of the situation that's going on in the ground.
Not going to happen, FEMA.
But, well, here's the thing, though. Why? Why do they care?
Obviously, why? Because they're crimes against humanity, and it's the evidence.
Right. Well,
and it's so obvious when you see the damage and you understand how fires work and how not everything burned. I mean, it's just like there's so many suspect elements in that footage.
It might be because they are covering up evidence that shows what really happened, but it's also to cover up the way they're handling the situation. They don't want people to see how they're actually handling it. But here's another thing that's important to point out is that the police chief of Maui was also the incident commander at the big Las Vegas shooting. You may or may not have heard of that. Yeah, it's the same guy.
Yeah.
So right now a red flag should be going off in your head, and you should be asking yourself, how is it that it's the same people in charge over and over again in different states, different times, different places, and yet it's the same individuals always involved?
If you're looking for a new job, go be a climate or a crisis actor. Because they need new recruits. They really do. But
here's the thing. Here's what I want to point out in discernment now, is that with the Las Vegas shooting, we still have not gotten any of the details about what actually happened. Despite the police kept telling us that once the investigation was over, they were going to release the details. They were going to tell us what happened. They never have. And that was, 2016, 2017-ish, somewhere around there. We've still not gotten any of those details. Now we have the same guy in charge in Maui. Do you really think we're going to get any details? Especially with FEMA calling for a blackout of video and photos and drone footage and all of that. No, they're going to do the same thing again. They're going to bury it all. They're going to wait for time to pass over, and everybody's just going to forget about it. The fact that we never got any details as to what exactly happened.
Well, there'll be so many new crises that come in the near future that, of course, it'll get drowned out, just like the chemical spills and all these food production plant fires and so many other things that everyone should be talking about. These are all big red flags for people to be discussing with their friends, family, and neighbors, and waking up to, wow, something's not right here. Maybe if we talk about it and come to terms with reality, something could change in the future. It's just a theory.
Well, what I say is do not let this one go like people let the Las Vegas shooting go. Demand answers and never let up. I don't care if it takes 5 years or 10 years. Never let up until you get answers from these people.
Yeah, because this is coming for us if we don't seriously do something about it. It's the imminent domain. I think that's one of the most concerning things for me, Kevin, is that they can literally just pay these people some money for their land and say the government owns the land now.
They don't have to pay them anything.
They don't? Well, I think they do have to pay them like market rate for their property.
We'd have to look into that, but I'm pretty sure the government can just seize your shit if they want to.
Yeah, Oprah's so excited about this. Oh my gosh. I mean, what is that transhuman person that owns Facebook? I think he owns a bunch of land on the island.
a lot of celebrities.
I mean, they can't wait to have it be their own little private resort there someday, I mean,
well, another big red flag in that scenario was the governor stating that I think it was the governor or the mayor, one of those two, in order to protect that land from being bought up by foreign investors, the government's going to take control of it.
Or the Smart Island event they were scheduled to have
Yeah. Well, now they want it
next
basically.
month. So
The government wants to take control of it so that they can redevelop it into a 15-minute smart city. That's really what's happening. But
yeah,
okay, let's move on.
Let's do it
to the next story.
That one makes me want to gag.
Which is the FDA has finally admitted that ivermectin can be used to treat COVID. Yes,
say it's not true.
Okay,
Come
well,
on.
Okay, here's the thing. I saw this headline about a week ago, and I was too busy to dive into it and figure out what was really going on. Because I'm like, really? They did? That's shocking, right?
Yeah.
So
time.
So then
3 years late, but hey.
When researching for this episode, I went to go find it, and I can't find it anywhere.
Oh, what
and
happened?
In fact, if you search it, and I'm not even saying using the G search, using alternative search engines, you cannot find anything about this except a bunch of mainstream stories debunking the fact that the FDA never said that.
Wow.
They still do not officially recognize it.
Wow.
So then I had to dig even further to find out what was going on here. And it turns out this is what happened. The FDA got sued for blocking doctors from using ivermectin.
Rightfully so.
In the trial, lawyers for the FDA said, FDA explicitly recognizes that doctors do have the right to prescribe ivermectin to treat COVID.
Not really, but okay.
So, well,
they're saving face, right? Like at the moment, but no, it's been getting confident.
This is like when the Democratic
ridiculous.
National Committee was sued because they cheated Bernie out of the nomination. In court, the lawyers then admitted that the Democratic National Committee does not have any obligation whatsoever to give the nomination to the person that the people vote for. Yeah. So the people believed that their voting actually determined who the Democratic candidate was going to be. But then behind closed doors in testimony, the lawyers admitted, it doesn't matter who they vote for. We ultimately decide, right? This is another example of that, where the FDA is out there publicly saying, no, you can't do this. But when they're under oath, and they know that they can legally get in trouble if they don't tell the truth, then the truth comes out and they admit that the FDA explicitly recognizes that doctors have the right to prescribe ivermectin.
Even though their license were threatened if they would do it.
Listen to a word these people tell you. They are all fucking lying.
And it's not just about making money. It's the worst thing. They have blood on their hands. This is literally costing people's lives. This is creating mass confusion, more medication that's actually really harmful. Hydroxy and Iver are two of the most renowned, incredible medications. I'm totally an anti-medication guy, but those have been really great, even though there's some rumors coming out that titanium dioxide is ending up in the ivermectin, or it could be graphene, who knows what. And I'm not sure if it's on the label or not, but just be mindful of your source, and hopefully it'll continue to be an effective medication. But in these times, I mean, even like with synthetic D3 supplementation, it is highly toxic, and yet most people don't know that. So, just be really mindful what you put in your body. Don't let anybody inject you with anything without having hopefully some peace of mind that it's absolutely necessary.
The difficult thing here is, look at all the hoops I had to jump through just to find this information, right? And that was me really I want to figure out what's going on here. The average person doesn't have the time or the desire to do that. So do you think they're really going to have this information? No. And that is the problem. That's how they're able to keep all of this stuff under wraps and suppress it. So that's why we're doing this show, because we're doing the research for you so that you don't have to. All right. One last thing to talk about real quick. So this broke across the media. Its original source comes from InfoWars, so take that with a grain of salt. But some whistleblowers showed up saying that the Biden admin is preparing to bring back masks and lockdowns again. And in conjunction with that, so that's what the story was. The whistleblowers are coming out and saying that the Biden administration is already preparing to bring back masks and lockdowns.
As soon as mid-September.
Okay. Yeah. So at the exact same time that story came out, if you were kind of scanning over the news headlines, you'd start to see that there are all these new articles coming out about new COVID variants. And they're different ones in each country. Man. So the UK is looking at a particular variant. The US is looking at one. They all have different names. They're starting to rev up the hype about COVID and COVID variants again. Now, why is that? Well, we're in the middle of election season, not just any election season. This is not a midterm election season. This is presidential election season. So just like they did in 2020, they're going to try to stir up all of this fear around COVID. They're going to most likely attempt to create pandemic 2.0 out of thin air like they did with 1.0 so that they can bring in masks, lockdowns, and mail-in ballots, which is the ultimate end goal. Bring in the mail-in ballots so that you can cheat the election. Trust me, that is what this is all about. So,
and amongst many other things, but I think that is a primary motive and or agenda. Yet, of course, this is coupling with many other things to further their Agenda 2030 goals.
Well, they never
and suppression, surveillance.
They never do just one thing.
Killing small businesses. Agendas. Yeah, just on and on and on.
But the main one is to keep power and control, and so they need to cheat the election in order to keep power and control. So that's the main thing that's going on here. So I just want to remind everybody that is watching this video that prior to 2020, we already had about 15 peer-reviewed studies that showed that masks do absolutely nothing. Since then, we've got dozens more studies that also prove that masks do absolutely nothing. I just saw a story
about the internet getting
today.
Scrubbed. Yeah,
There's another new study that shows that N95 masks, right? So when you have this debate and you say masks don't work, people will go, oh no, but the N95s do. No, they don't. Not only that, this new study shows that if you wear an N95 for an extended period of time, that you are actually exposing yourself to a high load of toxic stuff. I don't have all the details of exactly what they are, but just know that wearing a mask not only will not protect you from COVID, it will actually make you sicker.
Definitely.
Right. So
dumber too.
And when it comes to lockdowns, we already knew before 2020 that lockdowns didn't work, and now we have all of the COVID data in to see just how terrible the lockdowns were, how they destroyed the economy, they destroyed all the local businesses. They created a huge uptick in mental health problems, in spousal abuse, in child abuse, in depression, in drug use, in alcoholism, in suicide. Numbers skyrocketed. Far more people died from lockdowns than ever would have been saved if they even did stop the spread of a virus, which they don't.
Yeah.
So don't fall for this again. That's the main message. If you're watching this video, do not fall for this stuff. Any company that institutes mask mandates, boycott them immediately.
Well, yeah, and this is where, it's a little easier said than done sometimes, right?
You got to do what you got to do.
You're going to have to consider sacrifices, okay? Is it maybe losing a friend? Maybe it's losing your job. Maybe it's not going on the trip or not getting to go to the wedding where they, want you to get boosted.
Yeah, by the way, they're ramping up the vax hysteria again too. So they're already talking about a new booster that everybody has to get, including the people that have already gotten all the other ones.
Not going to happen.
Don't fall for it. We have mountains of data to show how toxic these things are. Mountains of data on this.
Yeah.
Prior to 2020, you could make the argument, it was not a good one, but you could make the argument that we don't know about these things, even though we did have studies to prove it. Now we have 2020 through 2023 data. We know beyond any shadow of a doubt that these strategies do not work and that they are harmful. So do not fall for it again.
The most important thing you will ever have is your natural innate immune system. And these chemicals and poisons and whatever else that we're being kind of inundated with through our food, water, and air, and the shots is spreading. It's actually spreading from the vaccinated people to the unvaccinated, and it's a whole new level, whole new game now to take care of yourself and to preserve your natural immune system the best you can. So just know that whatever you think is more important than that in the short term, long term, nothing else matters.
Well, that's all I got for this episode. So I think that's probably enough for one episode.
I think we got it. I think we did it. I thank you for sticking with us, and I hope you continue the conversation. I hope you share this video with maybe some of your friends so we can hopefully grow it and continue to stimulate this conversation about discernment, because it's an important one. Have a great week.